Hello and welcome to the DC United Kingdom podcast. We are back. I know it's been a while. It's been about 4 weeks, but I've got you. Some great news has recently been announced, so we'll go through that in a moment. But as you'll see, alongside me, just that side actually, not that side. I get confused because, flippity flop, is Daniel Wise. Hello, Daniel. How are you doing?
Hey, James. Good to be back. We're in some very strange times, but with soccer making its return, there's at least something that's kind of bringing me back to a normal state. But with a lot of turmoil, with the pandemic and the protests that are happening over here in the States, it's good to finally have something. At least, when I'm not trying to sort of wrap my head around everything that's happening and trying to advocate the best that I can, it's good to have something that at least takes a little focus off a lot of things. But, it's fantastic to be back. We've already had a few weeks of soccer with the Bundesliga, and now the MLS has announced their return along with a lot of other leagues, and so we'll finally be able to see our boys in the black and red take to the field. So I'm super excited about it.
No, absolutely. As you can see, I've just behind me, I've got a few of the shirts up on display now. To be honest, they'll come back down after the show is finished because they're just on coat hangers on the wardrobe.
Right.
I really don't have a proper podcasting room, but here we go. So we need that positivity in the times that we've had this year so far. It's 2020. It's been a bit of a write-off, hasn't it?
From the first moment, it's sort of, you had the conflict in Iran, and now it's just sort of snowballed into a lot of things with Tiger Kings and Death Hornets, and I was kind of hoping that would be the worst that we'd experience, would be that sort of craziness, but obviously with coronavirus and a lot of the police brutality that's been going on here in the States, and the response to that is distressing to say the least. But like we said, things are back, and so do you want so there was a bit of an announcement today,
yes,
and luckily things came through. So what can you say? What can you say about the return of Major League Soccer?
So this literally came out the hour before we started recording. So this is really hot off the press. So let me just get the actual article up, because which I've just posted onto the website, so on dcunitedkingdom.com, to head over there and have a quick look, because it's just, you've got all the teams there, so they're heading down on the, is it the 24th, did I remember, or was it the 20 or the 14th? I'm getting confused again.
Yeah, well, I guess first off, it was announced that there's going to be the 2020 MLS is back tournament.
Yeah. What a name!
Oh boy, leave it to us to really bring out the big guns in terms of name. Although I will say, with last year's MLS Cup, with the hats that came out, sort of through the kind of backwoods vendors, with the 2019 MLS World Cup hats last year. I thought that was primo, and that's something that should be considered going forward, because this is America, and obviously, it's going to be the World Cup if it takes place in America.
Of course, yeah.
But, I like the format, sort of taking a World Cup format, but then awful name. That's a Don Garber name, and so not thrilled about that. But very happy to see.
Too offensive, but it's very American, isn't it?
It's, I mean, the only next step, or the only thing that could be topping that, would be if they called it the MLS World Cup. Be a little bit on the nose, but
Yeah.
appropriate nonetheless.
Oh no, absolutely. Right, so I'm just going through it. So it's happening at the ESPN Wide World of Sports Complex. Talk
Yep.
about a mouthful.
Down in Orlando, Florida.
Oh yes, in July. So it all kicks off on July 8th. I mean, that's going to be sweaty.
Very. That place. If DC is sort of a Campbell's soup, like a Campbell's tomato soup.
I wonder where
Florida
this is going.
is the chunky, sort of beef stew of humidity and heat, and it's along the lines of the Qatar World Cup, except
Yeah.
soupy. And so, it's just, I guess, that's sort of the, only venue that can kind of handle sort of an influx of something like 2,000 players coming in, 2,000 players, and then you have staff and coaches and TV crews. So that's really the only logical place that can support something like that. But just sort of the worst time to really have something like that go on.
It is just going to be absolutely crazy. But they're giving the players enough time to kind of acclimatise. So they're heading out there from the 24th of June.
Yep.
So that's a good couple of weeks to really get used to the weather and the climate out there.
Yeah.
As we've already said, it's a FIFA World Cup style tournament. So we've got 6 groups. Matches pretty much every single day.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be awesome. But strange times. I don't know whether this is a typo, but you've got 9 a.m.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Which is really bizarre. So that's going to be 2 p.m. UK time. You've then got...
which is advantageous for you.
I am loving that. I am absolutely. The only downside is I'm back at work when this is on.
Right.
So I'm potentially going to be missing some games because, as you know, obviously the pandemic in the UK, it's a 2-meter social distance. So
roughly 6 feet, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm 2.1 meters, so it's roughly a James Graham away. Which is difficult to do, to be honest, especially on the paths. When you're walking down beside someone, the paths aren't even 2 meters wide, so you got to go on the road.
Right, you're in one of those, sort of picturesque English villages, aren't you?
Yeah.
Kind of in those Midlands areas. You're not too far from Leicester City, aren't you?
It's probably about an hour and a half, 2
Hour
hours
and a
away.
half.
So
you know what?
In America, that's quite close.
That's especially where I'm at, sort of in all lives matter country, like an hour and a half. Yeah, that's that's not too far away. It's we definitely measure our distances in time here, so that's close enough in my book.
Yeah. So we classed as Southwest, but it's about as north of the Southwest as you can get.
Gotcha.
So very close to Wales.
Yes. Okay.
So about 40-minute drive to Wales.
Not bad.
So it's quite close to Wales. Which some lovely places in Wales. Back on it. I've forgotten where. So 9 a.m. So it's going to be a 2 p.m. kickoff for me in the UK. So I'm back at work. I work on the high street. I'm not really going to get much of a break to be able to watch those games, so unless I'm on a day off, which sucks.
Yeah.
The rest of the games are going to be kicking off at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be about 1 a.m.
Again, really tough to catch all of that.
Yeah.
I can do it. Weekends, for the most part work, but it's a lot of soccer, and it's going to, for a league that really struggles for coverage here in the States.
Yeah.
I think they're, with the channels they have deals with, I think they'll definitely take that content, especially these days where there's virtually nothing as far as sports go. The best thing you can really find in terms of live competition is the Bundesliga, and then your IndyCar and Formula E racing, and I think Formula One racing. They have the racers on iRacing, and you're essentially watching a Twitch stream on TV of the racers.
Oh,
And
right.
it's showing the iRacing, and then you've got your sort of cross section of racers and showing their webcams and all that. And there's been some issues with that, where some players have actually been outright fired because of their conduct, because they treat it like they're playing a video game. There was one player who basically just rage quit, and so he was dropped by his sponsors and he was a racer for Audi, and
Wow.
Audi actually just outright fired him. And then you've also had racers who were quite loose with their language, and
Yeah.
that was essentially broadcast. And so, it's been a weird adjustment for a lot of people. So I imagine, the channels will take this, but again, it's going to be at a time when people are working. So, your hardcore followers are going to tune in some capacity, but really tough for that mainstream audience.
Yeah, I reckon what'll happen is the 9 a.m. games will be kind of the minor matches.
Yeah.
The 8 p.m. will be the big one. So if it ends up being someone like Atlanta versus LAFC, that would be an 8 p.m. kickoff game. The last time that they've got on there is 10:30 p.m.
And that's basically a wash at that point.
Yeah.
People are either, going to bed or watching the late night shows. So, well, I think MLS is going to try to do the best they can with what they have.
Yeah.
I think it's up to them to sort of really highlight the league
Yeah.
when they start up, and really sort of try to capture a new audience. But again, that's so tough, because here in the States, the response whenever soccer is brought up is eye rolls at best and outright hostility at worst. So it's just one of those problems. So it'll be interesting to see how all of that shakes out once this kicks off. And I guess sort of with that, I guess you also mentioned the collective bargaining agreement that was happening between the players and the teams and their association.
Yeah.
And so, I imagine things are a little bit different in England. Is this sort of the first time you've sort of seen or been exposed to something like this, like a CBA between players and teams?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the CBA is literally brand new to me. When I first started watching MLS and really getting properly into it, in the UK, just doesn't happen. There's no. Because I think the way the contracts are done over in MLS are a lot different to what we have over here in the UK. So we don't have things like the salary cap. We don't have it all done through a major corporation like Major League Soccer. It's done through the clubs. Granted, you've got agents to worry about over here and the rest of the world, so they get a lot of money. Then you've got image rights, you've got media rights, you've got all the other stuff on top of that. So that's done on a kind of a per player basis and then a per club basis. The only thing that you kind of have commitment-wise is with the media as such, so doing TV interviews. So every single Premier League manager has to do a press conference before the game and after the game.
Right.
When you compare it to United States and Major League Soccer, where you're only allowed a limited amount of chartered flights, that really, really stings. And then you've got the salary cap. So potential earnings are limited, and I get salary cap. I love the salary cap. Just needs to be
Yep.
a little bit higher.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely unusual. Let's put it that way. I'm just trying to think if there's any other sports that have something similar. But
Well, yeah, it seems to be a uniquely American thing. You don't really see it in other parts of the world, and it's happened in pretty much every league over here, where there is a players' association, kind of like a union,
yeah,
that represents the interests of the players, and every so often they will clash heads with the owners of the teams to essentially hash out a new collective bargaining agreement, which is sort of a baseline contractual standard that sort of goes across all the teams throughout the league and applies to the players. And so it sort of essentially guarantees sort of like a league minimum contractual structures, what rights the players have to like terminate a contract, or what teams can do to terminate contracts, create contracts, that whole thing.
yeah,
So it's all done to sort of like standardize, and so you've got a lot more control here with salary caps and whatnot. And then obviously over in Europe, you've got a wild range of sort of top to bottom what players
oh,
how good a player's agent is. Oh, did we lose each other?
we did for a brief moment, but that I think we're okay. We're okay. Let's carry on.
Okay, so a lot of it is determined by player agents, and so players can kind of structure their contract however they want, with like buyout clauses, or other weird things, like whatever that weird messy contract has, where he can more or less dictate where he goes after Barcelona. It's yeah, so you've got a lot more control over here, whereas in Europe it's a whole different kind of where the players have sort of like a lot of independence depending on their specific clout. So
Yeah,
it's really interesting.
it is. And
But oh,
carry on, carry on.
sorry. Oh, but yeah. So I guess with this one, we sort of we avoided a pretty hairy situation about a week ago.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're just being given, was it 48 hours notice to agree to this new CBA, and the previous one took, what was it, 18 months to hash out?
It was something like that, but they had just reached a sort of a they drew very close to a deadline where the teams were just about ready to lock out the players. So like a lockout during a collective bargaining agreement basically is this point where the teams are cut off from their players until a deal is hashed out. So that means no training. Players can't even enter a facility. They can't even communicate with coaches or administration or whatever. It's all done, through whatever the Players Association and the MLS has up in terms of the lines of communication. So at that point, the players would have been locked out, and then it would have really just been between the MLS Players Association and MLS itself. So got very close to having a bad situation. And a lot of that is because of the pandemic, and they had just reached a new agreement back in February. Yeah. But this whole thing had really thrown a wrench into that whole plan. So like, teams have had to reckon with scaling back because of this.
Yeah, it's been an absolute crazy time with the pandemic. Literally everything has been affected, and you look at some clubs, they've really adapted to the situation. You look at Bill Hamid's former team, FC Midtjylland, which I think I pronounced right. I think
that's how I pronounce it.
I think we'll go with it. And what they've done is they've set up a drive-in, because they've got massive car park, and I was reading up an article about it. And when they built the stadium and everything, it was right next to an arena, a massive, massive arena. So they had thousands of car parking spaces,
Mm-hmm.
but they always thought of it as a negative thing, because they had no use for it. The stadium isn't as big as this arena. So the pandemic hit, and obviously all the games are going to be behind closed doors. And instead of thinking, oh, well, we're going to lose out on a lot of money and all this, they realised actually they can use those parking spaces, put massive screens around the stadium, drive in. They've got the
Yeah.
radio tuned in to a certain frequency, so you can tune into the commentary. It's just, I think that is an absolute brilliant idea. It means the fans get to go. They stay in the car, so obviously socially distancing, and the inside the stadium,
Mm-hmm.
they've got big screens of all the fans. So
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea. I think it's just, I don't understand why more teams haven't done something like that. Whether it's just down to the fact that it's difficult with parking and whatnot, but I think they've really, really done well with that. I think they've hit the nail on the head with how to innovate and integrate fans back into the atmosphere.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with maybe a lack of top-down leadership, sort of overall with the pandemic response, and sort of like you say, sort of integration and innovation of different ideas as to help people adapt to this new situation. I yeah, a lot of people got kind of caught not really paying attention to anything. When it comes to America, I don't know. It's very strange. We're a very touchy feely nation. So I think, a lot of people, when they go to a sporting event, they want to be sort of in the atmosphere within the stadium.
Yeah,
They want to tailgate with their friends before the game. They want to be in the stadium. Otherwise, if you're not sort of in the stadium experiencing it, well, then why go?
yeah,
Because otherwise, if you're just sitting in your car watching a screen, we have this view that like, oh, that's not the same thing. That doesn't, count or anything like that. So it's sort of like this purity aspect, but like you said, it's kind of they're missing a larger point where like they can still support their clubs, support their teams, just in a different way. And so, there's just sort of this weird thing. Over here in the States, people talk about like they don't like watching baseball on the TV, but they'll go to the stadium to watch it because that's a whole different experience. It so this probably sounds super foreign to you. Probably no one says something like that.
no, to be honest, I get it. I totally
Okay.
get it. And I understand that because I have an experience, obviously, the culture of going to a sporting events over here in the UK and over in the States. Yeah, I totally get it. I think it's much. I do feel like it is much better when you're in the grounds.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to some fantastic soccer matches over here in the UK. So growing up, I was a Middlesbrough fan. So I mean, technically, I still am. Just not as much as where are you? These guys here
Yeah.
anymore. But I've been to some of the European nights, and
Mm-hmm.
there's some fantastic games. So I'll just quickly tell you about one. So um, FC Basel, we were up against it. We were 3 goals down on aggregate. So um, away goals, you name it. We had to score 4 goals to win the tie to get through to the semi-final.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we've played against clubs like Lazio, we've played against Roma, we've Sporting Lisbon the season before. We've played against some great teams, but we've never been up against it like that. And you get the first goal going, you get the second goal going, and then you're thinking, hang on, something might be on here. And you
Yeah.
just, you're part of the crowd, you're getting behind the team. The third goal goes, and you're like, holy, one
Yeah.
more. We just need one more. And then Massimo Macaroni steps up and gets that goal. And it's just, I mean, literally
that
hairs
is the
on the
greatest name.
back of my arm just talking
That
about it. And being that,
that,
I don't think I'd be able to talk about it or get those goosebumps if I was just at home watching it on TV, because I
yeah.
know the experience of being there and being a part of the crowd, being a part of the club. It's just so I totally get it why America, you want to be part of it, you want to be in the stadium and everything.
Hmm.
I totally get that. Um, and then we did it
I'll
again in the
say,
semi-final as well.
oh yeah,
That was just one crazy season. Get to the final at Eindhoven, and it's just like
yeah.
we've just come back from 3 goals down twice in a row.
Hmm.
Oh, it was just something else. But and then we lost 4-0 in the final.
Oh no. Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah, no.
Well, to sort of add to that, I guess first I'll say, aside from Nacho Monreal,
Mm,
Massimo Macaroni has to be one of the greatest soccer names I've ever heard. But two, sort of to that fact, actually one of my best sporting experiences outside of a stadium was when I was studying in London, and for that 2008 Champions League final between Chelsea and Manchester United,
yeah,
we went to the Student Union, which was kind of in this big Castle Square area, and it was something like 400 local students all came to this area, and they set up these big screens, and like, everyone was watching in the square, or they were inside the bar watching on screens in there. But like, you were talking about like goosebumps, and this was sort of before I really got into soccer. I got a good sense from that, especially when they got down to those final penalty kicks
oh
after 120 minutes. Everyone, for the most part during the match, everyone was just kind of sitting down watching it. And like, when goals were scored, they jumped up and, sang and hollered and all that. But then when the PKs start, everyone stood up, and then
yeah,
they all moved like within inches of the screen. And suddenly it was like you were at a concert. And then, every time, a penalty kick was scored or missed or whatever, you just had these crazy emotions that sort of went through in waves in the crowd. And then finally, when the final result was made, I mean, the place just blew up. It was a pretty incredible experience. So, to a degree, like, yeah, that's when I kind of realized, oh, you don't necessarily have to be in a stadium to have that experience, but you do need a sense of like kind of community while
yeah.
you're watching. So, but good on what team was that? Midland. Good on them for sort of figuring out a way to make this work during this time of Corona.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's nice to see the innovation and everything going on there. So I'll be keeping a keen eye on that and seeing
Yeah.
how it goes. So just going on that, I mean, obviously they're doing that, but what you've got as well, a bit more
Mm-hmm.
innovation happening over here in the UK with the Premier League. So the broadcasters over here, Sky Sports, BT Sport, um, they are looking at using their apps that you've got on mobile devices, and you've got. I know Sky Sports are going to do this where you have a virtual chat room, so you can see your mates,
Oh, that's rad.
watch the games whilst you're with your mates having a beer.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
that's awesome. And what's even
yeah.
better, it goes one further. They're going to broadcast that inside the stadium.
That's so cool. That's
That's
oh
awesome. I love it.
yeah.
I don't know why the BT are doing the same, but they're using their app to kind of bring some more innovative stuff to the experience. Thankfully, I've got access to both, so I'll be doing that from next Wednesday.
Nice.
Yes.
Uh
And then, for the first time ever, the BBC have got Premier League games free to show over here, which is just awesome. So I can't wait to see that. Then Amazon Prime have got a few games as well. So both BBC, Amazon have got 4 games. Sky have got
Wow.
50 odd, and then BT have got 20.
So you'll be able to more or less like catch everything,
Literally every single game has been broadcast.
and that'll be, I guess.
Oh,
But like with like BN Sport and Sky Sport and all of that, will so are those being broadcast for free? Like, are you able to watch those games for free on those apps?
so Sky Sports, they've got, like I said, they've got 50 odd games. I think they're broadcasting, I can't remember if it's 20 something or 30 something free of charge. So that's awesome.
Oh wow,
BT
yeah,
Sport are not doing any. So you have to be a BT customer to be able to watch all of them,
gotcha.
which kind of sucks.
Okay,
Since everyone else is
yeah,
doing free. But,
it's over here in the States. It's so fractured where you have to have, you know, not only a cable subscription for most things, but you also need your sort of disparate app memberships, and even then, you're not getting most of the games. Like you need an ESPN Plus subscription if you want to catch, maybe a couple La Liga games, a couple Serie A games. Then for NBC Sports, which does the Premier League, they'll show some games on NBC Sports, but then you need a separate NBC Sports Gold subscription, which is $50 or $60 a year to catch your if say you're a if you support a mid-table team like your Watfords or Wolves or whatever, you need to get this subscription so you can watch those games online. And so it's so fractured and it's so inconsistent. It's really rough. I'm an Arsenal fan, so like I'll be able to catch most Arsenal games as they happen, but even then that's still kind of 50-50.
I mean, do you want to catch all the Arsenal games?
Not in current times, but the options there, and I'm at a stage where I will politely decline. But I guess with the return or sort of the staggered return, one league that has benefited from an early return is the German Bundesliga. Yeah. And have you been catching any of that?
I've been catching up with quite a lot. So as you know, at the moment I'm off work, still looking after the little boy, and that has thankfully given me quite a lot of time to watch Bundesliga. So I watched quite a few games. I've watched it when it first started back. That was weird because there's obviously no crowd. So that was the kind of the first league that came back without any crowd there. Obviously, we had the K League just before it, but I mean, just quickly, just before we talk on more about Bundesliga, the K League. Did you see the team that put the dolls in the crowd?
I didn't catch any of that.
So I don't know whether I should say it, but there were dolls of a certain nature.
Like troll dolls
or blow up dolls.
No.
Yes. Yeah, those kind of dolls were in the stadium advertising.
Oh.
Yeah.
In a Western context, that is a...
That's the thing is, that industry is banned in Korea as well.
Is it?
Yeah. It's illegal.
Oh. Wait, so, man, that's so
crazy,
strange.
Right? They've got a small fine. Not a huge one, just a small one, but yeah. There you go.
Great. Okay.
Yeah. Back to Bundesliga. After that little detour.
I'm going to have to Google that and man, really sort of see, get that third-hand experience there. But so who did you have a Bundesliga team before, or has this sort of given you a chance to find one, or what's it been like?
So for me, I've not had a Bundesliga team. There was that little flowchart that I set out in the TC UK group,
Yeah.
which apparently I'm supposed to support Hoffenheim.
And what was your sort of track to them? Do you
Uh,
remember?
um, there was something about being a corporate lackey, which I said no to.
Yep.
Um, what else was there? I can't
There was
remember.
something
That
like
was the one
corporate
I kept.
lackey. Do you like a winner or do you
Yeah,
like a loser or whatever like
yeah,
that? And then there was like, do you like success or not, or like a little success or something like
yeah.
that?
So
And
yeah, so
then
I ended up at Hoffenheim, but to be honest,
okay,
I've been watching a lot of Dortmund just because of Erling Haaland,
yes.
because he is
And
just phenomenal.
I have to say the weirdest thing about sort of like seeing the return of Bundesliga is like what teams came back like as if they never even stopped competing,
Yeah,
and some teams that came back and clearly showed they took advantage of a break.
yeah,
You had some lopsided score lines, to say the least,
yeah,
on that return, and they primarily came from Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich.
yeah,
It seemed as though they had some maybe under the table training sessions, maybe some secret, midnight sessions where they, never quite lost that chemistry, because you had some teams where, I mean, you had players just completely lose their sense of organization, their sense of awareness, and then some players that just seemed so sharp as if they had never left the field in the first place.
yeah.
And so, yeah, with me, I guess I had been somewhat supporting them before, but I guess it's sort of cemented now. But it was Borussia Mönchengladbach,
Ah,
and the track there was kind of similar to yours. It was like, are you a corporate lackey? Do you like a team that wins all the time, wins a little of the time? And then something about, are you a fan of fascist architecture? And I said no. And so then Gladbach became my team. But I guess, it's sort of been between them and Schalke that I've sort
yes,
of
yeah,
followed over the years. Schalke having Weston McKennie as a player. So, like, I like seeing the American players making strides in the Bundesliga. And then Fabian Johnson was with Gladbach, or he is with Gladbach, but it looks like he won't be returning next season with them.
ah,
So there's talks about him coming to MLS. So, yeah, so they're sort of, kind of my full-time club, or I guess German club now. So
yeah.
I am with the Foles now, and I've sort of learning. They're an endearing team. They're BFFs with Liverpool, and so they're sort of
Ah,
like a German Liverpool, where they have "You'll Never Walk Alone"
yeah.
on their pregame playlist. And Liverpool, they've visited for friendlies and whatnot, and so, like, that's kind of an endearing thing. I like when teams sort of can kind of reach across boundaries and become friends with other teams. I think that's cute and everything. So yeah,
Yeah.
they're I am all into that.
Oh, that's quite cool. I mean, I've obviously know of Schalke because of Weston McKennie and Football Manager.
Yep. Yep.
Um, you've got Alphonso Davies, who's been
Yes.
tearing the Bundesliga up, absolutely
Absolutely.
tearing it up. It was I watching Werder Bremen, Wolfsburg. I was watching the other day,
Right.
and now obviously you have Josh Sargent. That's easy to say.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Flamin' heck. But yeah, he looks really good. He had a nice first touch on him.
Yes.
But I hate him because he scored against me whilst I was playing Football Manager, whilst I was watching that game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's a really talented player. Gonna be a mainstay on the national team for quite a while. And I will also sort of add, kind of bring it back to reality a little bit. Bring up Alfonso Davies, Weston McKennie, and then also want to talk about Jaden Sancho and
oh,
sort of the statements that they made in support of or I guess obviously supporting Black Lives Matter, but to really give them a big platform. And then for also the Bundesliga to sort of support that message, you had coaches wearing the Black Lives Matter armbands, and I think that's great. It's an ugly thing over here. I've had a lot of really difficult conversations with anyone who will at least listen a little bit. You know, it's an uncomfortable time, and you've got a lot of people fighting back against it for whatever odd reason, because it's a message that should be supported, but there are just divides in this country that have not been mended and not been tended to for a long time, decades. And it's really tough, and all I can really do is advocate and support the best I can. And you've got some people that are claiming, oh, this is virtue signaling and whatever. It's got to have a platform, and this stuff has to stop with racism in football. It's been going on too long. It's absolutely ugly over there. Especially with Italy's Serie A, and a lot of the divide that still exists there, and a lot of the fascist roots that still permeate within certain teams there. It's a huge problem. It's a bummer. It really, I love the sport, but every time that comes up, it bums me out. I have to speak against it. And I hate to bring down the mood, but if this is awkward for someone, figure out why that feels awkward. Figure out why this is a really sad thing, and try to adjust to it. And that's all I'll say about that for now. But support people who speak out against racism. Support them. Listen to them. Just be good. So. I'll back. We'll go back to the main topic, but I wanted to sort of say that.
No, I mean, I'm just gonna quickly add to it as well. The whole Black Lives Matter movement has been quite big over here as well. Full support from myself on that. There's been a few things I want to kind of mention which I don't agree with. So the guy who owns Sainsbury's, so a massive supermarket chain over here in the UK, is for Black Lives Matter. And he was saying about making sure all the statues that are to do with slave trading, they should all be taken down. Any references should be scrubbed. And then on Twitter, by some racist, I can't say the word because this is a clean podcast, and it was trending, boycott Sainsbury's. And I'm just like, what? Why?
Yeah.
I just don't get it. I really don't get it. And it, as you said, it frustrates the hell out of me. When you see, and you touched on it with the Serie A, and there was that graphic that they came out for their anti-racism campaign.
Right. Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, the monkey one, and I was just like,
yes, yeah.
Are you tone deaf right now? Are you not reading the room?
Yeah.
What is going on? And then obviously seeing it out there in the States as well. And I've seen a lot from Rory Moeda, who works for DC United, and seeing what he's been up to in the protests and everything. And you've seen the police, and it's the National Guard have been there as well. And it's just like, ugh.
Thankfully, they've been pulled out, but it got really, really ugly.
Yeah.
And a thing that needs to be understood is that the protests are completely separate from the looting. But you've got
Absolutely.
some attention seekers and drama queens in like Idaho or places like that, uh, whose response to the protest was, we're going to come out with our, military cosplay. We're going to brandish our AR-15s, our pistols, our shotguns, and we're going to intimidate, because, the items that we buy are apparently more important than the people who are getting murdered by cops. The black people, and then obviously the response is, well, white people get shot by cops as well, and it's like, that's the whole point, is you gotta come out anyways. If that matters to you, you gotta join in with them, because it has to stop.
Yeah.
The law enforcement needs to be reformed completely over here, not just toothless adjustments. There needs to be a top-down re-examination about how police conduct themselves, about how communities are disrupted. And, I think it's important that, if they're, for the cops who say they're good cops, the good cops need to speak up as well, and they need to act as well.
Yeah.
And it's not going to change until they do that.
Yeah.
So,
and just put out there, not all cops are racist or anything. There is those bad apples, and they're the ones who, unfortunately, we do take notice of, and we need to get those bad apples out. I think it's just, the only thing I don't want to happen is for every single cop to be tarnished with the same brush. That's the opposite side to it. I don't want that to happen, because, like I said, not all cops are going to be bad cops. But that, as I say, that the whole Black Lives Matter movement, I think everyone should be 100% behind it. And there was, I don't know whether you watched it last night. Well, it was last night for me anyway. The critical conversations on the DC United Facebook and Twitter page, with Bill Hamid, Ben Olsen, Charity Blackwell, Rodney Wallace, and Charlie Davies, I think it was. That was a bit eye opening. There's some. It was really, really good. So I would definitely check that out if you haven't already. Let's go back to some positive stuff for a moment.
You bet.
Yeah.
I guess one positive is DC United making a big gesture with Black Lives Matter, painting "I Can't Breathe" on the field, and Black Lives Matter in sort of the center circle. And on top of that, just to shift gears completely, Ben Olsen, his first post on Instagram was of the field. So
hang on, he's on Instagram.
Olsen is on Instagram. He is on the socials now. So this breaking news, everyone. Ben Olsen has broken his digital silence, and he's one of us now.
Wow.
He's an internet citizen.
Do you know what his username is over on?
I believe it's Ben Olsen 14.
Over on
Instagram.
Of course it is.
Yes.
Ben Olsen.
The legend has to make his mark.
It's Ben Olsen _14.
_14.
14. And he's now followed.
Yes.
There you go. Go and follow him. Go and load up Instagram. Go and follow
him. Yeah.
He's done 2 posts.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's in there. Wow. Good on him choosing Instagram, because Twitter is a minefield. That I always say, don't go to Twitter. It's the worst. But man, good on him getting in there.
Fair play to him.
So and then I'll also highlight another thing that DCU covered. They had a really good video on oh gosh, I'm blanking right now, on Moses Neiman, or Nyman.
Yes.
He basically, he's a homegrown player. Yep. Came up through the academy. He's a young kid, still a teenager, and due to sort of like the makeup of the team right now with a lot of issues in the midfield as far as player fitness goes, he's very likely going to see some first team action at this MLS's back tournament. So they had a really good highlight of him, and he was saying, it's such a strange feeling where he goes from seeing a lot of the players in the club, as legends, and then they're sort of calling him bro at practice. So he's he's coming to grips with this thing where it's like, I play as you as in FIFA, and you're calling me bro right now, so that kid's going through a big adjustment, and seems to have a really good head on his shoulders, really, really talented, and you kind of hope he comes through that. Getting some first team action is going to be good for him, and he can kind of flourish from here. And yeah, it's fantastic seeing that. So super excited about him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we've got a few good youngsters coming through. I think we've got obviously Griffin Yao, we've got Kevin Paredes as well.
Yeah.
And obviously Moses as well. So yeah, I think the future's starting to look a little bit brighter for us.
For sure.
Before we move on to more conversations between us, we're going to go on to an interview that I did earlier on today. It's with Dr. Chris Annunziata, who's this Chief Medical Officer for DC United, and he works for OrthoVirginia as well. So this is me chatting to him earlier on. This week's guest, I know it's been a while since we've had one, but I think it's a pretty good one. It is Chris Annunziata. Well, I should say Dr. Chris Annunziata. He is the Chief Medical Officer for DC United, and he's also at OrthoVirginia, who are a partner of DC United. So welcome to the show, Chris.
Well, thank you for having me.
That's not a problem at all. Would you be okay giving the listeners a little bit of a background to yourself?
Sure. I'm an orthopedic surgeon in the metropolitan D.C. area. I've had the opportunity to provide care for DC United over the past 2 years as a chief medical officer, and served as their chief orthopedic surgeon previously from 2003 to 2010. I've also had the opportunity to serve on the orthopedic staff for the Washington Redskins of the NFL, and still currently do so.
Wow. I've just been reading up a little bit of a bio of yourself. You've worked with the US men's and women's team in terms of soccer as well.
Yeah, in some capacity. Usually we do that regionally. So when the clubs come here to the D.C. area, probably at least once a year. So I've had the opportunity to provide coverage for them while here. Sort of as a liaison mostly. But that's been a wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, I can imagine. For today's show, kind of got you on to talk about, obviously, the players have been away from each other for roughly around 3 months now. There's been the recent announcement of the MLS tournaments that's going to be taking part in Orlando very soon. So kind of the first thing really is, it's been 3 months. How is it going to impact in team dynamics kind of scenario?
Well, of course, I think we had to get them all to lose 20 pounds. I think they've been lazy and sitting and eating donuts a lot. But, no. But we decided when this started to hit, we had the coronavirus pandemic hit. We had several meetings, but we had one large meeting at the facility, and developed with the medical staff, training staff, and the coaching staff, and had a discussion about what we should do when the players are off. And our staff, I think, did an excellent job in regards to organizing training programs for each individual when they were home. Obviously, we didn't know how long this would be, so we upgraded the training intervals maybe 2 or 3 times a week with our head trainer and his assistants, really looking at each individual and seeing, knowing from preseason what they need to work on, and making sure we enforce this while they were home, and giving specific instructions on what to work on to make up for their deficits that they showed preseason, but also to get them ready when we were to come back to train as a full team.
Yeah. So what kind of things have you been putting into place to keep them at sort of their top fitness during this enforced break then?
Well, most of it is, of course, individual work, but that's been limited too because, of course, they haven't had access to gym facilities or true fields. I know some of the guys that were quite creative and, some, of course, had some weights at home and were able to do some workouts at home. Our training staff did provide some other equipment that was that they had in the facility that they could give to the players. And then, some of the players would find some parks to work at. Actually, some were kicked off parks, but they did the best they could. It's certainly challenging. It wasn't ideal, but I think they all did a really good individual job in keeping their level of fitness up.
Yeah. So obviously going into this tournament that is due to happen, I've not seen a date for it yet. I'm sure that'll get announced fairly soon. In terms of the game time, are we going to see sort of a less strenuous games because of such a long break between the enforced break? It's kind of like between the end of the season of last season and the start of the new season, in my eyes.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, of course, it's a concern, but like I said, I do think we've done a good job in trying to maintain their level of fitness. I think the current game plan is when they do arrive in Orlando, that they will have a period of time where they can really acclimatize to the temperature and environment there, but also, get their soccer legs back. I think it's interesting, as you can imagine, as a competitive athlete or even a recreational athlete, with all the time off from the thing that you love, you're going to be really anxious to go. So I think there's going to be a very high level of energy. I think there's going to be a sense of urgency. Yeah. And I think players are going to really want to show what they have. And I think they're given a unique opportunity here in the States where I think they're going to be getting a lot more attention than they otherwise might get at a time of year when other sports here in the United States are very active, like baseball and playoff time for basketball and hockey. Now that we haven't had sports, especially televised, for quite a while, I think we have the opportunity to really showcase our sport here in the States. And I think the players are going to be excited about that and really show their best product.
Yeah, honestly, I am so looking forward to getting sports back, obviously over here in the UK. The Premier League is due to come back next week, which I am super excited about. But we've also had things like the Bundesliga being broadcast over here. So it's been nice to get something back. And I imagine in the States, sports a huge part of your culture over there. So I can't wait to see MLS come back. And it will be the first major league that'll come back, won't it? From what I've seen.
Yes. I mean, there's talk about the NBA coming back around the same time, and actually, interestingly, in the same location in Orlando. So I do think we have the opportunity, as I mentioned, to really showcase our sport, because I really think this is, it will certainly be one of the major sports that come back this early.
Of course. And the way the tournament is going to happen, there's going to be quite a few games in such a short space of time. Will we see players regulating their exertions? Will we see them potentially measure out how much effort they're putting into the games? I know some rosters will be bigger than others, so we'll see players being rotated quite often. But for those with the smaller rosters, will we see players not putting in as much effort throughout the game so they can last longer throughout the tournament?
That's a good question. I'm not. It's hard to say. I'm not really sure. I don't think anyone's really sure the actual organization of the tournament just yet in regards to the fine details. I do understand they'll be playing a few matches to qualify, and I know there'll be several brackets, and the winner of each bracket will go into the tournament play. But I'm not sure how they're stretching that out just yet during the week. I don't think anyone knows that just yet. Yeah. So we're going to have to really keep a close eye on our players. As you know, we monitor their heart rates, their respiratory rates, their accelerations and decelerations, and really see what their standards are and see if they're meeting those standards or exceeding those standards, and trying to adjust their training routine accordingly. So it's going to take a lot of work from the training staff to really keep this organized and find that balance of really exerting the players so they're ready to excel on the field, but also know when to pull them back and change their training routine, especially between the games. So it's gonna be very touchy. It's something we're gonna have to really pay strict attention to. And over the years, I have been impressed how much the sport has advanced in regards to really looking at the physiologic parameters for our players. And this is going to come into play a lot during this abbreviated season where we really have to pay attention to our players specifically to hopefully avoid any injuries.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me nicely onto the next question. Will fans expect to see potentially more injuries due to the style that it's going to be? So as from what I've been reading, it's going to be 4 groups. So really, I would imagine quite matches probably twice a week, I would imagine. I'm just taking a wild guess on that, though. Will there potentially, obviously, being out for so long with the 3 months, will we see things like potentially pulled muscles, like things like pulled hamstrings, calf muscles, those kind of types of injuries, do you reckon?
Yeah, I think that's going to be our biggest concern. I think the combination of time off as well as a different kind of climate. So going to Florida compared to here in Washington D.C. as well as other teams coming from Canada and Minnesota, New York. I mean, there's going to be at least a 10 to 15 degree temperature difference, and some of the players are going to have to get used to. So we're going to have to really focus on hydration and making sure our players are well aware of that to hopefully minimize cramping and then along those lines of muscle strains, which are certainly the bane of our existence. I think our training staff and most of the team's training staffs have done a very good job in the preseason and looking and see what deficits or asymmetries our players have in the major muscle groups, the quads, hamstrings, groin musculature, and really trying to correct that as much as we could preseason. Now, again, with the time off, it certainly is a big concern. But like I mentioned earlier, our training staff know what the deficits are for each individual, and really have tried to reinforce the importance of players' training and conditioning to get ready and minimize their individual risk for either recurrent injury or new injury, especially with the muscle strains, and that's certainly a big concern.
Yeah, I mean, you see players in the past, things like Michael Owen, who had a really bad hamstring, and that kind of really stopped his potential from reaching even higher tops of the game. I know he was Ballon d'Or winner, but he could have been even better than what he was. So hopefully we'll not have any muscular injuries whilst we're in this tournament for the team. In terms of acclimatising, obviously, as you mentioned, the temperature difference. I've been to Orlando in August time, and I know how hot it is. I can imagine we'll have plenty of hydration breaks during the games as well.
Yes, and the league has really done a good job over the past few seasons in really taking the time out during the game, if deemed necessary, to really hydrate our players. I think that's really a very constructive thing the league has done, and they'll definitely be paying attention to that in Orlando. They're well aware of the issue with respect to acclimatization and the humidity down there that other players may not be accustomed to.
I've got kind of just the one last question to ask you, Chris. And if you're okay to talk about it, what is the strangest soccer injury you've actually ever come across? Because I can imagine there'd be some bizarre ones out there.
Oh, boy, that's a good question. Let me think back a little bit. Strangest soccer injury. We've had some strange ones. I think more of the strange ones happen when the guys are at home. Oh boy, I wasn't ready for that one. I'm sorry. I wish I could be more entertaining. Nothing is really popping up in my brain in regards to that strikes me. Yeah. I think I'd say in a boring answer to your question. I'm sorry. I think that the biggest challenge we have, and you've already alluded to it with Michael Owens, is these recurrent muscle strains, and it really is a huge challenge for us. And it's a challenge for our training staff, a challenge for the players, and a challenge for us medical doctors, because we really haven't found a good answer for those injuries. We have an idea in regards to time players need off and how to train, but it's always a lot longer, ideally, to do the right rehab and treatment plan in mid-season. And of course, the players become anxious and want to push the envelope. And we find that we're chasing our tail all the time with these injuries, because the biggest risk factor for one of these major muscle pulls is having had a previous muscle pull. So once we start going down that path, it's a huge challenge for us. And that's, we're still looking for the holy grail in regards to some special physical therapy technique or medical technique or injectable technique that can help get these players back quicker, but we just haven't found that just yet. So it's something we're really looking for, something we're working on, and boy, it would really change the game for all parties involved. So it's kind of a boring answer to your question. I'm sorry. I guess early in the morning. It's early in the morning here in the States, so I haven't been able to think that one through thoroughly. But I'll tell you what, if I come up with something, I'll let you know.
I was going to say, yeah, it's very early, and I do appreciate you taking the time out at this kind of time. I think it's 7:15 your time at the moment, so I would say get some coffee down and get ready for the day, I would say.
That sounds perfect.
Well, thank you very much for, like I said, just taking the time out. I hope you do have a great day, and thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and have a good day. And I wish you, your family, and your listeners continued health. And please root for our DC United club.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Chris.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. And we're back. So that was a fantastic conversation that I had with him earlier on today. It's great to get it from a physical point of view for the tournament and seeing how things are going to go down. So I'm really interested to see how fit the players are going to be, especially after 3 months out of the season. It's basically when they return. Oh, when I say return, when they go down to Orlando, they're gonna have to go through pre-season again, which is going to be. Who wants to do that?
Well, after what we've endured with Paul Arriola, and then Junior Moreno having kind of a rough start, and Ola Kamara went down as well. You hope the players have found a way to stay fit. Having this break, it's nerve-wracking. You kind of wonder, are they going to be able to come back 100%? Are we going to see more injuries now because of this?
Yeah.
I like what Europe's done to sort of mitigate a lot of issues, is adding 2 extra substitutions. So teams having 5 subs for a game goes a long way. There should be more subs. Having to put 11 players on a field and only have 3 substitution options is a tight situation. And yeah, I think it's good seeing that type of reform in the sport. So I hope more of that happens, and more player safety is going to be accounted for going forward. And man, you've had a lot of inside scoop. You had that great interview with Ben Olsen, kind of giving you the mental aspect, the way the team has stayed together in sort of a mental sense, how they've kept a lot of cohesion together. And then, now you've got the whole inside story about how they've kept healthy physically. So, good on you. Fair play. Getting those scoops.
It's all in a day's work. I wish. I wish. That's not why I've been out for 4 weeks. Just trying to work on some new scoops, but it's literally, there's been no soccer. So
it's been hard.
It's been tough. But we've had the lockdown. We're starting to see places starting to come out of it. But we've obviously had a lot of time to really consume a lot of online content.
Yes.
What's been your favourite so far?
If you don't mind. Well, I will say, you asking me to get on your pub quiz, I was honored to do that. I performed terribly, but I had such a good time with that, and I hope you do more. That's such a great wrinkle to add to this, your media empire. I think that's fantastic. But I'll do a little shameless self-promotion here.
Go for it.
My friend Ken and I, we're co-hosts on the DCU Soccer podcast, and so because soccer was away, we kind of put our heads together and we decided, with this time we're given, let's kind of look back on DC United and see where we've been. And so we took a trip back and researched their 4 championship seasons between 1996 and 2004. It was really interesting to sort of research these games that I don't have a lot of personal context to, because I was uh, 10 years old when DC United scored or won their first championship.
Yep.
And so it was fun to go back and see these great players, to research all of that. So if you look up DCU Soccer Podcast, really just take that all in. We've got 4 hours of well-researched, discussed conversation or discussed content. And so, we're just really proud of what we kind of accomplished with that project.
And it's always nice to look back on past glories, especially the first championship. Obviously, it just kind of went up from there, didn't it? Really.
It really did, and we had a dynasty at that time. So we it's been a while since we've faced that glory. Where we're kind of in a Liverpool in the early years of the Premier League situation here. They were so dominant before. They the top flight broke off from the EFL and created this whole new thing, and Manchester United and Arsenal and Chelsea became so dominant in that period. We're kind of experiencing a very similar thing, where it has been quite a few years since that last tournament or since that last championship. And so, you hope we'll return soon. We still have the history, but at a certain point, teams will start catching up to us, and we won't necessarily have that to lean on anymore. So hopefully the team, gets back to that glory. I'm hoping for the best here.
Fingers
How about you?
crossed.
What's been, your favorite content so far?
So far,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I loved doing that pub quiz. That was just something else. Yes, we had technical issues where the internet disappeared. I mean, that was
Weird.
not fun. Yeah, that was not fun. It wasn't the internet that actually disappeared. It seemed to lost its connection to YouTube with the stream. So that was an experience. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I've loved seeing a lot of the content coming out from the club. I mean, I know because it's fresh in my mind. The critical conversation last night, that was
Really
very
good.
very good. So I want to see more of things like that. And from a player, the Gressel Special.
Yep.
I just love the name. I think it's a great name. And it's been great to see the stuff that he's been doing and the plays that he's been getting, even if he's had a Red Bulls player on.
Right.
Ugh.
Well, I will also highlight the work they've done to sort of increase their Latino engagement.
Yes.
Having a dedicated Spanish-speaking interviews, and I think that is a really good step by the club as well, especially after last season, where the club definitely seemed a bit tone deaf with the fans, and now that they've taken some legitimate steps, I hope more of that continues, and the only thing I would say, is just having more upper level management, sort of be more district based. I think we lost one of our chief officers recently.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't remember the context behind it, but I think mostly it was because he wasn't really around in the DC area, and so I think he ended up going back to Florida, and so I that's just the big thing is if this club wants to create that sense of community, they need to sort of hire within the community, because that's what matters. DC is a really vibrant town that's dealing with a lot right now in terms of people being pushed out of the city, and the city, becoming more gentrified. So, it's good to see the club really sort of stepping up and increasing their representation.
No, absolutely. It's that's the one thing that has always made me love the club, is that the fact that they want to be that community. And yes, there's been some bad times with some of the content. It's not been great, but this last off season just gone, their content went from here right up to here, and it's just been getting better and better and better every single time they share something. It's just, what can you say? It's just been fantastic. Another question I want to ask you.
Yeah.
If you could interview just the one player, past or present, who would it be? And it could be DC United. And then just literally anyone you could.
Okay, so I there is one answer I would have, but I've actually had the pleasure of meeting him. Is Ben Olsen.
Mm-hmm.
I've met him a couple times. He's a fantastic guy to talk to. I've never, I've gotten to, sort of get a little inside baseball, but not super, in depth on anything. But he's just a guy I really like. He's just a no nonsense type of person, really direct and but at the same time a good conversationalist. But I would say Aleko Eskandarian.
Yeah?
Yes. That guy had a big personality. And I sort of really got to get a good look of the contributions he made to DC United in the few seasons that he was there, from I think it was 2003 to 2006. Just seems like a really good guy, a real talker. You could probably have a solid drink with him and get some good stories out of him. So that is my pick. Just a fantastic guy.
Nice. I mean, obviously, I've thankfully managed to interview Ben.
Yep.
Realistically, there's two players from the past that I do want to interview, and that would be Jaime Moreno.
Yeah.
Just so I can talk about his time at Middlesbrough, and then obviously moving over to DC United, and bringing me and support with him. And then Freddie Adu.
Oh boy, yeah.
I would love to really just have a proper sit down chat with him and just find out what went wrong. What went wrong in his career to lead him to, unfortunately, not having a club anymore. And that move to Benfica, should he have done that at that age?
Right.
Because he was still, he was 16 when he moved over there. And then he's just gone from club to club to club to club, continent to continent. He's played all over the place. He's played obviously in North America, South America. He's played in Europe. Has he played in Asia yet?
Oh
Probably.
Man, not that I remember. But I mean, it's not just sort of that, but like he's bounced from sort of top tier leagues to sort of second, third division leagues, and still wasn't able to find a place even in that situation.
Yeah.
So it's just man, that is a mind bending thing to look at. He's apparently turned it around, and not in terms of being a player, but in terms of being a coach and a mentor. I believe he started up an organization where he's working with young kids and helping them develop their soccer skills, and I think imparting knowledge from his experiences and how they can better or have a better result in their own lives, not necessarily soccer specific, but just in general.
No, absolutely. I follow him on both Twitter and Instagram, and you see some of the things that he's doing, and he's doing a lot of training at the moment. So potentially he might even be wanting to get back into club soccer. So fingers crossed he finds that level where he does perform really, really well. I'm surprised he didn't really do it at Las Vegas Lights. I thought that would have been a great club for him.
There's an interview. It was either ESPN or Sports Illustrated, where they interviewed him, but then they also got some inside talk from players or managers associated with like Las Vegas Lights, and the words about him were unkind, to say the least. It's a fascinating interview. I'll see if I can send a link to you if I can find that. But it really does break down why it was that he ended up with the way things did with him. So yeah, fascinating. It would be really interesting to sit down and talk to him.
Yeah. So, Freddie, this is probably never going to happen. But if you do listen to the show, send me a DM.
Absolutely.
Fingers crossed. You never know. So, we did get a question sent in from a fan of the show, Brian Lake.
I'd say a super fan.
He's a bit of a super fan, yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoy his questions. They've really, really good ones. And he's asked this for this show. As much as we all want football back, should we support it when the story coming out of the negotiations with Major League Soccer is that the players were strong-armed into returning when they may not have been completely comfortable with the idea of going to Florida for the tournament in the beginning or the matches back home to complete the season? That is...
It's a lot.
Yeah. Should we support it? From a selfish point of view, hell yes. I want football back.
Right.
But from a player safety point of view, that's where we've got to really tread lightly on. Are they going to get tested? You look at Bundesliga and the level of testing that they're doing in that league. I think it's a test before the match, test after the match, test 24 hours before the game, and then a test midweek. So that's near enough 4 tests a week. Would MLS get that?
So, I will. So there's a common refrain here in the United States. Whenever these CBA discussions come up, people bemoan it because they basically say, between the owners and the players, it's millionaires fighting against billionaires. Valid. It's kind of ridiculous where, I think like in the NFL, the league minimum, I think, is northwards of 500,000 per year for a minimum wage player. Yeah, I think it's 750,000 if my memory serves me. For Major League Soccer, that is not the case. Yes, you've got top tier players that are making quite a lot of money, but you've got players, and this shocks me most of the time, making sort of a corporate wage when you look at it. Maybe I think it's like 50 something thousand per year or somewhere around those lines.
I think from the game Football Manager, because they've kind of got the salary structure quite right on there. I think the senior minimum salary is, what was it, £1,000 a week?
Okay.
So that's around £50,000 a year. So it's probably around about $55,000 to $60,000, I want to say.
Yeah, that sounds pretty accurate. So, yeah, gosh, for those players who, when you talk about being strong-armed, they have very little in terms of influence. And when you're talking about sort of wage cuts throughout the league, yeah, your top tier players are fine, but for those who are making that senior minimum, that's a squeeze. And especially for the fact that, you've got these teams that are based in major cities, well, except for Columbus, because that place is a pit. But I will always take an opportunity to trash Ohio. But anyways, you've got players living in very expensive cities, putting their bodies on the line, so when injuries happen and if you're making a minimum wage, that hurts. And so that is very hard. So in that sense, I am upset that the players have gotten strong-armed by the league. and especially with having to go down to Florida in the middle of July with very little in terms of organized preparation.
Yeah.
That's very hard to support, unselfishly. Now, yes, it's going to be nice having soccer back, but it's how else could this have happened, or how else could this have been remedied? That's tough to know. That's why people make the big bucks to organize this stuff. But MLS could have a better commissioner. Don Garber, roundly disliked, and recently didn't do much to sort of minimize a lot of that attitude. Sort of saying, when they were sort of in preparation to announce this stuff, he threatened to fire anyone who would leak information to the press. And you look at that, and it's like, yeah, MLS is kind of strong arming, because it's a reflection of the leadership, top to bottom. It's a bad look. It's a bad look. How else could it be fixed? Who knows? But again, optics are everything.
Yeah. It's a tricky one. When you look at obviously the location, the facility is brilliant. There's no bones about it. It's a fantastic place to do it.
Yeah. To be fair, they are going to be at a world class. This is like, Manchester City level in terms of amenities and just overall facility condition. They're going to a very good place. But again, the way this all sort of happened, it's sketch.
Yeah, that's it. I want to ask how are we going to do, but nobody knows right now. And obviously we've just heard the announcement, so we'll save predictions for another show. Mm-hmm. That's it. We've come to the end. We
went places. We went up. We went down. We went.
Yeah. You've talked about
loopy.
soup.
We talked about a lot of soup. So man, there was a lot built up. I was happy to get a lot off my chest.
Yeah.
To this, and thank you so much for having me on. I'm always tickled when you give me the call. So always a pleasure.
Well, like I said, always thank you for being on. Let the folks at home know where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, posting all sorts of spicy stuff at S Dakota Soccer. And then you can also check out my podcast with Ken over at DCU Soccer. And again, check out that DC United Championship retrospective. We worked way too hard on that thing, but it was so much fun, and I think it's a quality show that we put in.
Oh, absolutely, do check that out. From me, obviously, as always, you can find me at DC United Kingdom over on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. It is at DC United Kingdom FC. Check out the website dcunitedkingdom.com. Click that merchandise link because you can get these. Look at these. So
absolutely,
this is brand new. I've just switched merchandise stores over the lockdown period. So
give it a quick stand up if you can.
Oh, you want me to model? You want me to model? Hang on 2 seconds.
The full package, the full Monty.
Gotta make sure I put some trousers on. I've got trousers on. Give me 2 seconds. I'll take the headphones off.
All right. Little bit to the. Oh, that is fresh.
There you go.
That's fresh, clean, crispity crisp.
Oh,
got
absolutely
the crispiness.
Beautiful. There's
very nice.
There is so much on there, which is the reason why I switched. So click on the merchandise link. You've got the these types of t-shirts. There's jackets on there. There's mugs, which I have an old version of the mug, just not here. Otherwise, I'd be drinking coffee from it, like I do most mornings.
Right.
But yeah, check it out. It's very well priced. I've got to say that. Obviously. Also, click on the membership link. There's kind of a tiered membership. There's a free one and there's a paid for version. If you went with the paid for version, you get an exclusive t-shirt, which you can't buy anywhere else.
Right.
So there's a little hook. But yeah, the group is over on Twitter as well, which is fantastic. So
we just need, you ever seen Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels?
Not for a long time, but yes.
You know that scene in the beginning where Jason Statham is selling the jewelry and all of that, and you got his guy on the inside that comes in and is like, £5, that's a steal. I'll buy it. We need that person to kind of chime in on this call and be like, are you kidding me? That's a steal. I'll buy it now. That's my awful English accent right there. I rarely break that out, but you know, I wanted, again, with how heavy this got, I wanted to kind of lighten it up a little bit. So yeah.
Let me put it this way:
such good stuff.
Your awful, as what you said, awful English accent is much better than my. I'm not even going to attempt an American accent, so because God knows what comes out. It'll probably end up being Australian.
Someday we'll get that out of you. Maybe the next pub quiz.
Hey, if I've had a couple of drinks, you never know. I end up going more northern though. So if you struggle to understand the questions, that'll be why. In terms of pub quiz, before we do close out the show,
oh lovely.
I'm potentially looking at doing one at the end of this month. So for you listeners out there, if you want it, let me know. It'll probably be the end of this month or the start of next month. Time just kind of flies by when you've got a kid. It's just been a bit crazy, let's put it that way. But
absolutely,
as you can see, well, if you're listening to the show, you won't be able to see it, but if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see these things up here. It's a goodbye from this one. It's a goodbye from the Pride one, seeing it is Pride Month still.
Yep.
And it's a goodbye from the first ever DC United Kingdom t-shirt. So
fantastic.
Until next time, Vamos United.
Vamos United.